Good to come together. Our guest tonight, Gil Hoffman, actually spoke right here from our pulpit, I think 2005, when he announced to us that Israel was pulling out of Gaza and that things would be okay. No, he didn't say that. He did not say that. He said he was concerned too, I'm sorry. But no, it's good to have an opportunity to come together to learn and to share in community. But especially in times such as these and what we've collectively experienced these past 16 days, it is particularly good and important and meaningful to know that we're not alone, that we are part of a people, that we're part of one people. A quick little teach. In the Talmud, the ancients actually have a discussion elucidating this very point brilliantly. In Tractate Barachot, the rabbis discuss if God wears tefillin. I know that's really been on all your minds. If God every morning is wearing tefillin, it's strange and it's a weird image. But you know the rabbis of old, they love to get into the hypotheticals. So after much discussion, they agree that yes, God does wear tefillin. Good, that's solved. But then the next debate is the best. They ask, if God wears tefillin, what are the prayers inside God's tefillin? What does God's tefillin actually say? Our tefillin, we know, has the words of the Shema that proclaims that God is one. It wouldn't make sense for God to have prayers saying the same, reminding God that God is one, right? So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak taught that God's tefillin must say, what God must pray for is that we, the Jewish people, are one. The people of Israel are one. God's tefillin talks about Am Echad. That's God's prayer, and that's God's hope, that we can be one people. We're thrilled that Hadassah asked Temple Shir Shalom to partner tonight in bringing in Gil Hoffman and have this opportunity to learn together and to learn from him. I want to thank Marcy Rosen and Mandy Garver for suggesting this back in May, as well as Hadassah's chair with Marcy for tonight, Sue Korn. So, yeah, we can applaud them. Good idea. And little did we know back then how important tonight's conversation would be. And to our Temple Shir Shalom leadership, to our president, Allison Parr, and to our vice president of programming, our executive vice, Gary Schumann, who are attending tonight too, their eagerness to make tonight work is what partnering is all about. And last, I want to give a shout out to our executive director, to Brian Fishman, for making sure all the details work together tonight in conjunction with Hadassah, and to our head of security, Michael Pearl, leading his team and keeping all of us here safe. While most everything we do these days is tinged with some anxiety and some sadness in our Jewish world, even in these challenging times, we are inspired by what Israel is able to come together to do, to overcome, and to lead us then to do the very same. Most importantly, we can ask tonight, may our brothers and our sisters, our family and friends in Israel be safe and be protected. And may their vision lead us to continue to help better our world through their examples. So in this spirit, it's my honor to turn tonight's program over to Hadassah as I welcome Hadassah's president, Mandy Garver, to lead us now.
Thank you. So Hadassah is really happy to be partnering with Temple Shir Shalom in what could be one of many events of this type, I hope, in the future, and certainly for this very important event. While I'm very happy to welcome all of you here tonight, this is really a very dark time for all of us. We're still reeling in shock from the unspeakable barbarity of the Hamas terrorist attack just 2 weeks ago, and the horror of us, of Israel, now being at war. You may have noticed the blue ribbons that were on the table when you checked in, and if you didn't take one then, please do. They are to show your solidarity and support for the safe return of the hostages that were captured by the Hamas terrorists. Now, a little bit about Hadassah. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Hadassah, we're an organization that supports Hadassah Medical Organization. It's 2 world-class hospitals in Israel, and as you might suspect, in times like these, we become of vital importance. Our hospitals in Israel have been going to extraordinary lengths to meet the needs of the increasing numbers of severely wounded and traumatized victims of these attacks, and to our IDF soldiers. We also have two youth Aliyah villages, and they are also taking in large numbers of children who need to be evacuated from the south of Israel. Right now, Israel needs Hadassah more than ever, and Hadassah needs you. Your financial support now will help Hadassah continue to provide the kind of first-class medical care to those in need in Israel and to help save lives. In the words of Hillel, if not now, when? If ever was the time, now is the time. Please help us help Israel. When you came in, you might have seen these cards with a QR code that link to a donation site for Hadassah. If you didn't get one coming in, please take one going out, and please consider making a donation to Hadassah. I want to thank you very much in advance, first of all, for being here, also for your caring, and we hope for your gift. I'd now like to introduce Marcy Rosen. She is our co-chair, along with Sue Korn, as Rabbi mentioned, of this event, and she is also our next president of Hadassah Greater Detroit.
Rabbi, thank you for keeping my paperwork warm. Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you for attending tonight. Hadassah planned this event back in May. We couldn't anticipate Israel would be at war with Hamas just 5 months later. It's my understanding that our speaker this evening was in Israel when war broke out. Fortunately, he was able to get to the United States a few days later and is here with us tonight. Mr. Gil Hoffman is the executive director of HonestReporting, which fights for Israel in the international mainstream and social media. He's a lecturer on political strategy at Israel's College of Management and served for 24 years as chief political correspondent and analyst for the Jerusalem Post, where he's now a regular columnist. The Allgemeiner website recently named him one of the top 100 people positively influencing Jewish life alongside Presidents Biden and Zelensky and Prime Ministers Sunak and Netanyahu. He was raised in Chicago, graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern University School of Journalism, and served in the IDF Spokesman's Unit. He's lectured in all major English-speaking countries in the world, more than half of the Canadian provinces, and recently made history in Hawaii, becoming the first Israeli speaker to have lectured in all 50 states. He currently lives with his family in Jerusalem. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Gil Hoffman.
Thank you so much, Marcy and Mandy and Sue and Rabbi and everyone who has made this event happen. And thank you to Hadassah for helping me have my amazing children and be able to park. Hadassah, right now, it's very sad that they're more needed than ever. With the war that's going on right now, they bring some of the casualties to the hospitals that are closest to the border, but the most serious ones, they airlift to get to Jerusalem in where they can get the best care possible. And right now they're moving full speed ahead with building a whole rehabilitation ward on Mount Scopus in the hospital that was supposed to be ready only in a few months. And I'm told that they're building it quickly because even when a war ends, unfortunately, it takes a long time to recover. And people will forget about the people that were injured in the war. We're constantly highlighting the statistics of somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 people who were murdered. But we've got 6,000 people injured. And they're not lightly injured. They're very serious injuries. And so it ends up being that the rehabilitative care after that lasts a lifetime. And so that's why it is so important that we are here during this war helping out Hadassah. Now, my little girl I was with when the war began, it was Simchat Torah, a great holiday. And we were walking to synagogue when the first siren went off in Jerusalem at 8:15. We had no idea war had been going on for more than an hour already. But she wanted to be the first one in line to get the candy that they give out on Simchat Torah. And when the siren went off, instead of continuing to walk to synagogue, we went back home and we went to the shelter, the bomb shelter, and which is, of course, dark. We don't want to turn on the light on Shabbat, and empty and a little scary. And I sang to her and everything to calm her down and told her, don't worry, those sirens are good, they protect us, and we're very far away from the bad people over here. And then when it ended, I said to her, okay, go up to Mommy upstairs and I'm going to go to synagogue. And she said, no, of course I have to go. We have to pray. And she understood. It just turned 7. I think more than a lot of the grown-ups did at the time of what was really going on. And when we were planning this talk, I really thought I'd be speaking about something completely different, of course. I thought I'd be talking about Israelis fighting other Israelis. I covered politics for a quarter century. My job was to write about Israelis fighting other Israelis, and we hit a peak. Yom Kippur, Jews physically fought Jews in public squares in Tel Aviv about how to pray. And I honestly, I wasn't looking forward to be talking about that, to be going from a very divided Israel to a very divided Jewish community in a very divided America. And the only positive in a very horrible 15 days has been to see the way the people of Israel, the American Jewish community, and Americans and people around the world have united in support of Israel. The media, not so much. We'll get there. But the governments and the people, absolutely. I'm going to take you a couple months back. I had a briefing with the top general, and he said the people of Israel aren't ready for a war that could happen at any time. He said we've gotten too used to what he called boutique wars. You know, wars that last only a few days, not too many people on our side get hurt. It's a minor annoyance and we move on. That's not what war is, he said at the time. A war is like the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago, where you've got multiple fronts and funerals every day, everybody knowing somebody who lost their life. That's what real war is. And unfortunately, we're experiencing that right now. And unfortunately, it wasn't just the people who weren't ready. It was the leadership in the army as well. I had a briefing with a top security official very close to Netanyahu right before coming here. because, when I go on these speaking tours, I've got to know things that even the people that know everything here don't know. And I was looking at my notes on the plane on the way from Israel to America from that briefing. And I looked for the word Hamas. And I saw, what word does it say after the word Hamas? Restrained. That's what he told me. 18 hours before the war began. That Hamas, they're not participating in wars anymore. We had 3 wars with Islamic Jihad. They didn't get involved. They've become the government there in Gaza. Maybe they're getting out of the terror business. What they care about is facilitating more and more Gazans to come work in Israel and improving their quality of life. Boy, did he get that wrong, huh? The Gazans who came into Israel were the ones who led the infiltrations because they knew where to go and went from house to house, brutally murdering their former employers. Just today, because the reporting has gotten desensitized and people are starting to forget and even deny what happened 2 weeks ago, the Israeli government facilitated 200 journalists to watch the videos taken from Hamas terrorists that had shown exactly what they did, as well as interrogations of arrested Hamas terrorists who talked about how they were told that every Jew they would bring back into Gaza, they'd get $10,000. And they were told that normally Islamic law has rules about how you treat people, but they received permission from the Muslim authorities that they need to be murdering women and children too, and that you can even rape after death. That's what they said in their testimony. Absolutely horrible. And they were shown murders as they took place, pregnant women and the babies inside. This is what we are up against. This kind of barbarity. These kinds of atrocities we could not have dreamed of. And so it wasn't just advisors. Netanyahu himself was asked by a Jewish leader recently in a private meeting, are you taking seriously those meetings that there have been lately between the heads of Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran? And he kind of downplayed them. Iran has been organizing these attacks, getting ready and training the terrorists for more than a year. They planned it all together, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. They exploited the divisions that there are inside Israeli society. The head of Hezbollah said this is the time to attack when they're divided and weak. There were tremendous intelligence failures. We were not on their correct frequency. We relied on technology too much. We spent $3 billion building a fence that was very sophisticated with a lot of cameras and sensors that we might have thought could facilitate moving the soldiers elsewhere to other problematic borders. It was Simchat Torah and Shabbat, and half the soldiers who would normally be stationed there were told that they could stay home for the holiday, which saved their lives. But you had a lot fewer soldiers near that border than there'd normally be. Normally, Gaza is also watched by 3 blimps, all of which had experienced mechanical failure in recent weeks. And they sent the drones that took out all the cameras and all the sensors, which allowed them to go over the fence in 15 different places and go straight to that party that there was, where 260 of our most beautiful young people were dancing, and go from community to community and murder as many people as they can. Go to the army bases where they caught the soldiers sleeping, threw grenades, and that's how they lost their life without even being able to fight back. A tremendous, tremendous failure. And now we have to be making up for it. And we have to. I've got 25 cousins who've been drafted among the 360,000 mobilized, ready to go in at the right time. Meanwhile, they've been doing what they can by air to facilitate it being as safe as possible when they go in to hit the terrorists, and we can only hope that they succeed. The Ayatollah of Iran wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter, 4 days before the war, "Israel will be gone." And that really emphasizes that this is not a war between Israel and Gaza, between Israel and Hamas. This is a war between civilization as we know it and the worst evil possibly imaginable. And that's why we have to win on every battlefield possible. There's 3 battles going on right now for Israel's existence. One, on the military battlefield, we're supposed to have an advantage, right? One, on college campuses, we have a great disadvantage. And one on the media battlefield, which is an uphill battle, but the fairest fight, and one that we can all participate in. How many of you are on Facebook? Almost all of you. How many of you are on X, formerly known as Twitter? Or how many of you are ashamed to say, or maybe you used to be? Okay, how many of you are on Instagram? Telegram? Snapchat? Wow. Your grandkids, okay. TikTok? Really? Okay. LinkedIn? LinkedIn counts. Are any of you on none of them? How do you see your grandchildren? Then you're very blessed that they live close by. So except for those 3 people, we can all take part in this very important fight for Israel. And winning on the media battlefield is the key to winning on the other 2. It's the key to making things a little bit easier on college campuses at the toughest time imaginable. And the generals told me that we fighters on that media battlefield are the ones who help the army have more of an hourglass, have more time to do what they need to do to restore Israel's security. And so that's why, even though I liked my old job, I liked covering politics for the Jerusalem Post, got to know Israel's leaders over the last 25 years very well, got to be a part in writing the history of the Jewish people that a guy named Moses started writing a long time ago. Even though I liked that, when I was given an opportunity to lead the fight for Israel on that media battlefield and try to help us restore deterrence in that fight, I jumped at the chance. And so I took this job 15 months ago, and since then, we have gotten 6 very anti-Semitic, Hitler and Hamas praising journalists fired around the world, including 1 from CNN and 3 at the New York Times. We had a war in August 2022 in Gaza. It was a very short war. And when it ended, I asked my team, who covered this war? There's no freedom of the press in Gaza that's controlled by Hamas. And so they looked at the background of the different stringers, and they found that the guy who covered the war for the New York Times, Fadi Hanona, had written on social media, "Jews are sons of dogs, and I'm in favor of killing them, including children and the elderly, like Hitler did." He was the guy who covered that war for the New York Times. And then I got a meeting with Patrick Kingsley, the bureau chief, and he said, you guys at Honest Reporting, you did a better job than we at the New York Times in vetting that guy. And I said, one, how about three guys? Because that morning I told my team, look, give me something to talk about when I meet with the bureau chief at lunch. And they found a couple more New York Times staffers, one of whom had praised the Har-Nof terrorist attack, which was the shooting and stabbing in a synagogue that was the model for Pittsburgh, Poway, Copenhagen, Christchurch, and supposed to be Colleyville as well. The other guy, Solomon Hiji, had written on his social media, Hitler is great, and all kinds of praise for him. Well, we found out a few days ago that Suleiman Hiji has been rehired by the New York Times. We asked them about, is this really true? And they defended it completely and said, last year he wasn't abiding by our guidelines, now he does, and he's writing professional reports from Gaza. He's a Nazi. The New York Times is entrusting its reporting from Gaza to a Nazi, and they have no shame about it at all. The Associated Press, to their credit, when we found out that their writer in Gaza, Issam Adwan, had in English on social media written about how Israel needs to be annihilated and that the Palestinians need to revolt and Israelis are Nazis, and praised the guy who praised the Har-Nof terrorist attack, at least they suspended him. Now, they said that they were suspending him to look into what he had written. There's not anything to look into. It's very obvious, black and white. We have a petition on HonestReporting.com asking the Associated Press to not let him come back to reporting about Israel. I mean, I don't mind him reporting him, from Iowa or the Philippines or wherever, but he cannot be reporting about a war that's intended to annihilate the world's only Jewish state. It's really an uphill battle. Now we found a guy in Reuters who also was a terrorist supporter. We're doing our best. We formed a new part of our website called Take Action, honestreporting.com/take action, because we want people to be able to go and press a button and make an impact. That's what we're doing, and you could check us out, click subscribe about what we're doing. It could help a lot, because this war started out with rather positive coverage of Israel. You remember the first day of the war, Anderson Cooper cried, and the second day, Dana Bash read the Kaddish on her show. Well, you had media outlets around the world had pictures of our beautiful teens being dragged to Gaza with headlines about Israel's 9/11. Well, as we go further away from that day, the reporting about Israel gets worse and worse. Already that first week, you had NBC refer to Hamas as a freedom-fighting movement trying to free Palestinians from occupation and reclaim large parts of Israel. You had the Wall Street Journal, which should know better, say that Hamas has indicated it's willing to accept a two-state solution based on borders that existed before 1967. No, they're not. They're not in favor of a Jew existing, whether it's in the periphery of Gaza or here in Michigan. And we had John Vauss, one of the anchors on CNN International, say that 9 million Palestinians live in Gaza, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. There are only 2 million, and he must be getting confused with New York, Miami, Boston. Gaza doesn't crack the top 50. But we want a better day for Gaza. We're not at war with its people. We're at war with Hamas. We're at war with the same kind of people who attacked America on September 11th. And that's why we have to win. And so the heroism that we've seen over the last 2 weeks has been incredible. I have a cousin who's a top commander in the IDF, and he told me he saw two people who just 2 weeks earlier had screamed at each other in a public square. And there they were, one jumped on a grenade to save the other one's life. That's who we are. And I've gotten to see, as I've been traveling throughout America, this is the sixth state I'm in since a week ago Friday, how all those people who are so divided are uniting in a beautiful kind of way. I was just at a big rally for Israel in Chicago last night. More than 1,000 people came and showed their support. There are people, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, people from every possible political spectrum, people well divided in American politics as well, that's for sure. And so we're seeing unprecedented heroism, loyalty, and unity. And if you look back through history, whenever there's been a terrible surprise attack, whether it was the Yom Kippur War or Pearl Harbor or Napoleon attacking Russia, what do they have in common? They all lost. And Hamas is going to lose too. Hamas cannot be allowed to win. Even if it takes some time, we are going to do what it takes in Israel to make sure Hamas will not control Gaza anymore, to make sure we will not be under that terrible threat of people who commit atrocities. And I know that you too are going to be doing your part. You're supporting a valiant effort here to have our hospitals be ready for the rest of this war and the recovery process in the days, months, and decades ahead. You're taking part in the media battle too, just by being on social media and just by being a good person and telling your friends the truth about what's really happening in Israel. So I want to thank you for all those efforts that you're making, and feel free to ask me anything about anything going on. But we're going to win. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you very much.
So, yes, we can add, look at you guys go. I have one for Marcy, so Marcy, you can run around too. It's our game show kind of opportunity. It's the Marcy and Michael show. Here we go. Sorry.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question? Is
Yes.
this water over here for me?
That water's for you, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes. If it's not water, it's mine. So, just, yes.
People should say their name before they ask their question.
Terry Weingarten. Here.
Thank you. I want to know what we tell the college-age children that we have and that our friends have that rightfully so are concerned about all human life. And they feel terrible about the Palestinians, but they don't understand that Hamas is the one that's using them as human shields, that Hamas is the one that's been creating this situation, that they're the ones who didn't give them resources. So they're coming from a place of kindness, but they're misdirected. But how do we, as parents, aunts, neighbors, how do we share with them in a way that they're going to understand? Because don't forget, too, in the United States, we're very divided, and there's a lot of fake news. So they don't believe the news media, and it sounds like at the moment a lot of it they shouldn't. So how should we handle that with the 25, 26-year-olds?
Okay, so first of all, it's okay that they don't believe the news media. We saw what happened with the hospital, where the entire world reported incorrectly that Israel had bombed a hospital and killed 500 people. They didn't wait to find out the truth, which only took an hour. But once they report such a thing, it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And it's good that they've learned not to believe everything that they read. That goes back to the beginning of time. Rabbi, you know who the first journalist was? The snake in the Garden of Eden. And he didn't report accurately, did he? So,
I'll use that one.
feel free. They won't remember it was me. So our children need to know that Israel does everything possible to minimize civilian deaths on both sides of the border. The commander of British forces in Afghanistan, Colonel Kemp, he said that Israel does more than any army in the history of mankind to prevent civilian deaths among its enemies. The video that we circulated that got seen by the most people is a video with a BBC journalist, who's clearly an Arab, who says the Israeli army told all the people here to leave. They called people, they texted people, they sent down flyers in Arabic telling them exactly when they're going to hit and telling them where they can go to be safe. Wow. Did America do that when they carpet bombed Afghanistan? You know, armies don't do that. We do that to prevent civilian harm. What did they do to our civilians? They raped and murdered and videotaped it. They murdered a grandmother and uploaded the video to her Facebook. And that's how her grandchildren found out that their grandmother, who they talked to 10 minutes earlier, was dead. They raped women and sent the videos to their parents. I think they can relate to understanding that that's evil. And I know it's very hard on college campuses right now, but we've all had different awakenings of different events in history that changed us. Some of us are old enough to remember in the room 48. Some of us are old enough in the room to remember 67 or 73, or September 11th, or Pittsburgh. This needs to be the wake-up call. And I hope it will be. Thank you. I think it's true. Fran, what?
Stark Hundike.
Wow.
It's a long name.
Okay.
Anyways, I recently heard from my nephew who works for AIPAC that there are actually 300,000 Israelis that are displaced. And I haven't heard this reported anywhere else. A, do you know if it's true?
We tweeted it, 300,000.
Okay, 'cause I haven't seen it on any of the major, nothing in the United States has been said about over 300,000 Israelis being displaced, which I find horrendous that we've had to do that.
Yeah,
And most of my friends don't know that this happened.
Sderot is a city of 20,000 people, and it's empty. And right now, we're displacing people from northern Israel as well. We're a small country, the size of New Jersey, and we're trying to keep our people out of harm's way, too. And so, yes, there are people in Gaza who Israel is encouraging to go to the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Why the southern part? The terrorists aren't there because there's no Jewish community on the other side, like there is in the northern part that's near Ashkelon and the central part that's near Sderot. So we want to be able to get at those terrorists, so we're encouraging to be in the southern part where on the other side there's desert. But meanwhile, we are getting our people out of harm's way, and I'd like to see some compassion from the world for that, too.
Go to Ken Jacobs. One section.
Israel has said that Hamas will not be able to rule Gaza once this is over. Do you think the Palestinian Authority will step in, at least in the interim, until something else is suggested?
So Ken's asking the million-dollar question about the end game. I'm from Chicago, and we had a mayor in Chicago for decades named Daley, and the main columnist who covered him and wrote about him for decades, Mike Royko, once wrote about him that Daley never started a sentence that he knew how to finish. And the rule in war throughout history is you never start a war without knowing how to finish it. Well, there are exceptions to that rule. And Ken, this war is one of those exceptions, where we had to start immediately and fight back because of the abominable things that have been done to our people. And Netanyahu brought into his government Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, two former chiefs of staff of the IDF, after his government did not have people with such military experience, to put it mildly, before. And then we had a couple guests that came to our security cabinet. First the Secretary of State and then the President. Their Hebrew must be pretty good. And still trying to figure it out. Those two guys are continuing to give us advice on that, for better or for worse. But they're also there to protect us, and we appreciate that. And eventually we'll figure it out. I can tell you that the National Security Advisor to Netanyahu, Tzachi Hanegbi, who's gotten a lot wrong in the last few weeks, he said in the meeting with Sunak that the Palestinian Authority can at least temporarily play a role in Gaza. Let's not forget, the Palestinian Authority of Mahmoud Abbas was overthrown in Gaza. Hamas did not come to power by election. Don't let anyone tell you that. They came to power, I don't like the word coup so much, I like the word overthrow. They took Abbas's people and threw them off the top of buildings to the floor. They literally overthrew them to take power. And it'll be hard to get them to retake power. But as a temporary measure until there could be some kind of international force, that hasn't worked out too well in the Middle East ever. There's no good idea. There's no good endgame.
I was looking at you, Marcy, for the Eber section.
Jonathan Eber, what are the implications for Netanyahu and his governing coalition after the end game and this is over?
The implications for Netanyahu is that he'll be the next person to go on a speaking tour in Detroit. I don't know if you could use he takes a lot more money than I do. I'm just warning you. And his wife requires even better accommodations than I'm getting.
And cigars, too.
Yeah. So, no, he can't be elected to anything ever again. He had his 74th birthday this Saturday. You are allowed to retire at a certain point. He's the longest serving prime minister in Israel's history. I mean, if he had it his way, obviously he'd last a lot longer. His father died at the age of 102. So if he could, he'd last another 30 years as prime minister. And if he could, he'd pass the abolished death bill, eliminating death. And then he'd be our emperor for hundreds of years. But there are young, up-and-coming leaders in his party and every party who are ready to rule. Right now, the polls show that 80% of Israelis say Netanyahu needs to take responsibilities for the failures that led to this war. 80%. And among Likud voters, 66%. That's a big deal. The polls show that if an election would be held today, Benny Gantz's party would win 40 seats, and Likud of Netanyahu would win 19. And that the parties that currently make up the coalition before Gantz joined of 64 would win 43 seats. And the other parties would win all the rest. So there is considerable anger at Netanyahu for his role in what went wrong.
Okay, I'm the one that's not on social media, but I understand the huge power of social media. So what do you suggest that we do, or they do? Because I don't know how to do any of this, obviously.
I'll answer your part on you.
But I was going to say is, how do you suggest that that this group uses social media to get the information out, like those films that you talked about, that you're showing that Hamas had, shown and you showed to the news people? How do they, us, let's say me, because I have email and so on, how do we get that word out?
Sure. I didn't get your name before?
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy Martins.
Okay. So, Judy, social media is very powerful. You can reach out to a lot of people and help them know the truth about what's going on in Israel. And the way for social media to be effective is to be a mensch. If people like you, then they'll find you to be a credible source of information. People can share the information that they get from our website, from HonestReporting.com, and other resources. Our videos were seen in 2022 by 4 million people. Our videos have been seen by 50 million people since this war began. And 79% are younger than me, and I'm 46. So we're getting out of our echo chamber, and that is important. For those who are not on social media, please go to our website, HonestReporting.com, and click on the Take Action button over there, so you can send an email to the New York Times saying, I don't want a Nazi writing, send a letter to the petition to the Associated Press that says, I don't want someone who wants the Jews annihilated to take a job back with you writing, and all kinds of things. All of that helps. The slogan of the Israeli Water Authority is Chaval al kol tipa. Every drop matters. We are all a drop in helping Israel win that media war and have a safer future.
I'll say HonestReporting.com. You all should connect with that and sign up for their emails. They've helped us here at Temple. We do our high school program here on Sunday evenings, and so Sunday on October 8th, right away, it was just time for our kids to express their angst and talk with them, with 50, 60 kids. But last week then, when we were together, we did a whole social media sort of debrief, and I used information from HonestReporting.com to share with the kids how to read between the lines, to know the truth versus fiction, and how much I appreciated what Honest Reporting was able to give to us and help us. And we all should be literate, because that's part of, Terry, what you were talking about on the college campuses, because our kids are educated, unfortunately, through TikTok and through Instagram and through Snapchat. And they see these sound bites that are, half-truths or no truths and all lies, and don't know what that reality is. And we have Jewish kids who are posting this stuff too. And, it's very disconcerting, and we have to be able to fight that with truth. And I think it's such a priority, so.
Good evening. My name is Les Roche. In talking about the idea of the end game that we spoke about a little bit earlier, it seems to me that Gaza, about the size of Detroit, as huge a challenge as it is, can be overcome. But the challenge of Hezbollah and Iran is a different magnitude. Could you talk about what the thinking is currently? Is the end in Gaza, or is the end in Iran? And how will that look, or might that look?
So, Les, this question is very important. Hezbollah has 10 times the firepower that Hamas does, and they're equally evil. And they have missiles that are not rockets that are fired indiscriminately. They have precision missiles aimed at the most sensitive sites in Israel. They can do a huge amount of damage. And that is why America sent its most sophisticated aircraft carrier to be not outside the coast of Israel, outside the coast of Lebanon. They are ready, if necessary, to take action. Hezbollah we had a war against them before, but they weren't part of the government before. So civilian targets were not legitimate. And now they are. They're the government of Lebanon. And you've heard that one word that the President of the United States has been using over and over again, right? Right. So he's told them don't. They've been warned. And you realize he's speaking to Hezbollah and as less as Iran. I mean, Iran fired from Yemen at us. So, this is unfortunately a regional war already. And we've been trying to wake up America about the danger from Iran for 30-something years now. Remember the first speech of Netanyahu to Congress about Iran wasn't when Barack Obama was president. It was in 1996. And maybe they finally get it. Because as long as the regime of the Ayatollahs is in power, they're all going to continue to threaten Israel, who they see as the little Satan, Europe, who they see as the middle Satan, and America, who they see as the big Satan.
Okay, I think we're going to take one more question.
Whoa. Call on Paul.
I'm going to call him Paul.
Yeah.
A little nepotism here.
I might do a second afterwards, though, because Michael's here.
Okay. Hello again. If you can comment on how this will affect or affecting the relations, diplomatic relations with these Arab countries that Israel recently established diplomatic relations with. How's this play out?
I have had the wonderful privilege of visiting both Morocco and the United Arab Emirates. If you would have told me back when COVID was starting in March of 2020 that my next trip abroad would be to Dubai, I would have thought you're nuts. But it was in December 2020, in the heart of COVID. I went there and saw a beautiful synagogue and a thriving Jewish life and a great kosher restaurant in the Burj Khalifa and the tallest building in the world. And since then, they've built a few more synagogues, and now there are 7 kosher restaurants in Dubai. How many do you have in Detroit? Okay. Depends how you count them, I guess. But you have more Arabs in Detroit than there are in Dubai, too, but that's another story. It's more than 1 million Israelis have visited Dubai since 2020 when we made peace. And Morocco, we were going full speed to Morocco, too, until that earthquake. I had the privilege of visiting. I went from the synagogue through the market back to my hotel. I was wearing a Cubs hat, and everyone greeted me, Baruch haba. I was wearing a Cubs hat. Do I look Jewish? Thank you. So those countries we've still maintained relations with. I don't think people are going right now. It's very hard. It's strange. If you want to get out of Israel to America, and you can't get on an El Al flight, people have been flying through Dubai. But the tourism, no doubt, has gone down a little bit temporarily. But Paul's question is an opportunity to focus on what might have been. Because the reason why Iran started this war now was because we were on the way to making peace with the Saudis. The UN General Assembly was last month. And that's where the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia said that things are moving full speed ahead. It was going to happen. And once we made peace with Saudi Arabia, non-ideological Muslim countries in Africa and Asia would have joined in the Gulf states, leaving behind just Iran and its allies and the Palestinians with misguided leadership. That's it. So it'll come back. The Saudis have been very vocal against Hamas. They realize that Iran did this because they don't want the Saudis to get a nuclear capability. And we just have to remember that with all due respect to whatever I said wrong when I was here back in 2005, right after we withdrew from Gaza, when I spoke positively about something that was fraught with danger, that it's been proven that in the Arab and Muslim world, they respect Israel when we're strong, not when we're withdrawing and weak, not when we're making concession after concession. And they want relations with us because we're a top strategic and technological power. Right now, we do not look very strong. And that's why a decisive victory against Hamas and the other proxies of Iran is actually the key to bringing about Middle East peace. We need to win.
One more question.
It better be good. I'm Michael Frank. You talk about 3 wars, the land war, the media war, or I think it was the university war. What if we win the land war but lose the media war? What if we don't? Well, what does that look like? And what does it look like when you're going to a war? You're not prophetic, I'm not prophetic. We assume we're going to win because we have massive power. But what if we lose? What does that look like? Israel's gone from sea to sea. There's no Jews left. You can't go into a war that you expect to lose, but you never are guaranteed you're going to win. So what could it look like if we lost any one of those 3 wars?
Well, let's now go to the pastries that are waiting outside. Thanks, Michael Frank, for just ruining everything. No, it's a fair question because it's an existential reality that we are talking about here.
Sure. It is what it is. Well, you know, I normally tell a lot of jokes throughout my talk, and I took them all out because of how somber everything is right now. Lots of people in the room have heard me speak before, and I sound a little different. But this is the situation that we're in right now. If we lose on college campuses, then you'll have a lot of young people who are educated wrongly, who'll think that the Jewish state is the root of all evil. And if we lose on the media battleground, then there's going to be international pressure on Israel. The media will continue to think that we're bombing hospitals on purpose. By the way, they bombed our hospital in Ashkelon, and they destroyed the maternity ward. So yes, there is a hospital that was destroyed. It was by Hamas. And you certainly will have a harder time going to work if people think we're evil. And the thought of losing on the military battlefield, you know, you don't have to dream it up. You saw what happened when there wasn't a Jewish state, right? We need one. We need to have a haven for the Jewish people. History has proven that. But history has also proven that it's our enemies who remind us that we can't be fighting each other. Who was the first person to ever call the Jews a people? Pharaoh. The rabbi got it right, Pharaoh.
I know something, just a little bit.
And there have been so many pharaohs throughout history who the first act of anti-Semitism was in this, what we're going to read in the Torah portion this week. Abraham, the first Jew, he got thrown into a furnace for his belief. And it hasn't gotten much better over the years. There'll always be the enemies to remind us that we are one, we have to unite, and we will, and that will help us win. Thank you very much.
So, again, I wanted to thank Gil Hoffman for returning to Temple Shir Shalom and being a part of this program with Hadassah. As Hadassah mentioned, there's a lot of ways to give, and Israel needs our help. And so Hadassah tonight is what we focus on and supporting the efforts there. At Temple Shir Shalom, we can tell you about a lot of other things too and other ways to help Israel. It all is equally of importance. We're doing projects with JNF to help settle individuals in southern Israel.
Including Ukrainian refugees.
Right. Set up tent cities, in a sense, in Timnah, in the national park. So really remarkable stuff that Israel has coalesced, come together to make this possible, and we so much appreciate that. Couple quick Shir Shalom announcements. Seeing Penny stand up reminds me of that. Dan Nichols, our artist in residence, is here this weekend. Obviously, our services all add prayers right now for Israel, for the IDF, for those who are held hostage, and how important that is. It'll be a really beautiful weekend together with our friend Dan and Cantor leading us in music together, and how much that means to us coming together as well. Of course, when it's a special service like that, that means Dan Nichols, it's Nichols and Anash, chords and cocktails, someone new. And so we'll have our special Moskowitz's fall cider that will be enjoyed by us. If you're not a member of Temple, you're welcome to join us for our services and the special cocktails as well. Speaking of which, we don't have cocktails tonight, but we do have a nice little dessert to gather, so we don't have to run out. And Gil can hang out with us for a little bit too.
And answer more questions for people that are still raising their hand.
And also,
I promise. I'll talk to you.
And also learn more about some of the things that Hadassah is doing. So thank you to Marcy and to Mandy for helping put us together.
Where are those pledge cards for Hadassah? Where do you get them? Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. Cantor, October 30th, on Devil's Night, the Cantors Association, bad connection. The Cantors are joining together to have a concert to raise money for our Federation emergency campaign. And that will be taking place at 7 p.m. at Shir. Thank you for reminding me of that. You'll see that in your emails at Temple, but a wonderful opportunity, of course, to be together and sing with our cantors and support Israel. Right. No, these are all equally as good. And tonight, like we said, we're focusing on Hadassah. Again, thank you to Hadassah for bringing us to Shir Shalom. Really appreciate the opportunity and sharing in this night and welcoming Gil Hoffman to our Metro Detroit community. Thank you, everyone. Come and join us in the lobby for a nice little gathering.